Page 35. The Canterville Ghost by Oscar Wilde. Oscar Wilde was born in Ireland in 1854. His stories and plays make fun of British high society, manners and ideas of right and wrong. In The Canterville Ghost, one of Wilde's funniest and best loved stories, Wilde makes fun of the aristocratic ghost of Sir Simon Canterville. When the story begins, the American ambassador to Britain, Mr. Hiram B. Otis, has just bought the big country house Canterville Chase for himself and his family. He is told that the house is haunted, but that does not worry him. In the following excerpts from The Canterville Ghost you can read about some of the things the ghost and the family get up to. A few weeks after buying the house, the family went to live there. The family consisted of Mr. Otis and his wife, a well-known beauty from New York, their eldest son, Washington, their daughter, Virginia, aged 15, and the twins, two boys of school age. A large carriage met them at the railway station, and they began their drive to Canterville Chase in beautiful summer weather. But as the carriage drove into Canterville Park, the sky turned dark and heavy. Drops of rain began to fall. They were greeted at the door by a lady in a black dress. She was the housekeeper, Mrs. Umney. "Welcome to Canterville Chase," she said, and led them into the library. Tea was ready for them here, and they sat down and looked around while Mrs. Umney served them. Suddenly Mrs. Otis noticed a dark red stain on the floor. Page 36. "Yes, madame," said the housekeeper. "It's a blood stain." "How nasty!" cried Mrs. Otis. "I don't like blood stains. It must be cleaned up at once." The housekeeper smiled and said in a mysterious voice, "It is the blood of Lady Eleanor de Canterville, who was murdered there by her own husband, Sir Simon Canterville, in 1575. He lived for 9 years after that, and then he suddenly disappeared. His body was never found, but his guilty spirit still haunts this house. The bloodstain can never be removed." "What nonsense," said Washington Otis. "Pinkerton's Wonder Stain Cleaner will remove it in a second." And before the housekeeper could stop him, he went down on his knees and rubbed the stain away with a small stick of stain cleaner. In a few moments the stain was gone. "I knew it," said Washington, smiling at the family. But as he spoke, there was a great flash of lightning and a terrible roll of thunder that made everybody jump. Mrs. Umney fainted. "What shocking weather!" said Mr. Otis calmly, lighting a cigar. Next morning the bloodstain was there again. "It must be the ghost," said Washington. He rubbed out the stain a second time, but the third morning it was there on the library floor again, although Mr. Otis had locked the library door and taken the key upstairs with him. The whole family were now quite interested in the stain. That night Mr. Otis was woken by a strange noise outside his bedroom door. It sounded like the clanking of metal. He got up, took a small bottle out of his toilet bag and opened the door. Outside in the passage he saw a terrible old man. His eyes were like burning coals, and he had long grey hair. He was dressed in dirty ragged clothes from an earlier century, and there were heavy and rusty chains on his arms and legs. "My dear sir," said Mr. Otis, "you really must oil those chains. I leave this bottle of Smith's Rising Sun Oil here on the table for you." Then he shut the door and went back to bed. The Canterville Ghost was shocked and angry. He knocked the bottle down and hurried down the passage, making deep groans and giving out a fearful green light. Page 37. As he passed the twins' room, the door opened and a pillow flew past his head. He did the only thing that seemed safe, disappeared into the wall. He reached his secret room out of breath and very insulted. Never in 300 years of haunting had he been treated with such disrespect. He decided to take his revenge. Next morning at breakfast, Mr. Otis said to the twins, "It is not very polite to throw pillows at him." The twins burst into shouts of laughter. "But," he continued, "if he refuses to use the Rising Sun Oil, we'll have to take his chains away from him. It's quite impossible to sleep with all that noise going on outside the bedrooms." They heard no more noises for the rest of the week. The only thing they noticed was that the bloodstain on the library floor was back every morning. This was strange because Mr. Otis locked the library door every night, and there were bars on the windows. The changes in the color of the stain were most remarkable. Some mornings it was dark red, then it would be bright red, page 38, then purple, and once the family found it bright green. This amused the family very much, and they tried to guess what color it would be next. The only person who did not find it funny was Virginia. The second appearance of the ghost was on Sunday night. Not long after they had gone to bed, they were woken up by a loud crash in the hall. Rushing downstairs, they found that a large suit of armor had fallen onto the floor. The ghost was sitting on a chair, rubbing his knees in pain. The twins had their pea shooters with them and started to shoot dried peas at the ghost while Mr. Otis pointed his gun at him and told him, in best Californian style, to put his hands up. The ghost jumped up and rushed upstairs, giving his famous and terrible devil's laugh. A door opened and Mrs. Otis came out. "I'm afraid you are not at all well," she said, "so I have brought you a bottle of Dr. Dobell's mixture. If you have a pain in your stomach, you will find this an excellent cure." In the rest of the story you can read about the other tricks the twins play on the ghost to frighten him, and how in the end the tender-hearted Virginia takes pity on him and helps him to find eternal peace.